Smells like another Mogadishu tire fire. Get the marshmallows.
All right, so that's like the next piece. The fifth one is basically it says we've received valuable insight from sensitivity readers on 2 of our recent books. So they're talking about they're going to include sensitivity readers in their creative process now. I'm shocked that they weren't doing that already. I thought they were. I mean, they're so Wizards is so woke. It's kind of a shock that they haven't started doing anything like that. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I don't know if they were doing it before. I'm sure that they probably already had a code of conduct and they had, a trust and safety council and stuff like that. But maybe it hadn't. Maybe a lot of that was lip service, and maybe it's still lip service. Obviously, they're paying the Dane Geld to the SJWs, and the problem with that fundamentally is that SJWs hate D&D. That no matter how much you pay the Dane Geld, eventually the Danes are going to get you, right? They're not going to. There's no amount of tribute, no amount of cocksucking that Wizards of the Coast can do that is not going to end with the SJWs calling for the destruction of D&D, because D&D is fundamentally to them a representation of something outside of what they want,
Yeah. Well, I mean, going back to what you're saying is like D&D is like mythic and symbolic, and if you don't understand or you don't understand that language, then
according to the philosophers they love, according to someone like Derrida, right, myth is unbelievably dangerous because all it does is it propagates a civilization and the values of the civilization that you want to tear down, that you want to deconstruct, right? So if you can destroy people's myth, if you can destroy everything from organized religion to fairy tales, and twist them around and show how, in fact, these things are actually evil. Therefore, you turn people against their own culture and their own civilization, and then you make that civilization collapse so you can create the glorious new socialist utopia.
Yeah.
This is why they go after every part of popular culture, right? Be it TV shows, comics, RPGs, young adult novels, everything.
Harry Potter.
To subvert them. Are there any other points?
Got anything to say on that, Benjer?
Yeah, I just agree that I'm surprised Wizards didn't have that already. I'm surprised that just the general writers and functionaries over there aren't already so sensitive about everything that anytime they hear a little word that might be taken the wrong way, their ears don't prick up and they're like, oh my God, we're like 2 steps away from a hate crime.
Oh yeah, didn't they get in trouble over something to do with Chalt too?
Who? What?
Not Cholt. The dinosaur.
Oh, right.
Oh, yeah, yes, the jungle area of the Forgotten Realm.
Yeah, they got some heat over that.
Because they presented a culture there of black-skinned humans which was loosely based on kind of sub-Saharan African culture, and it was meant to be fairly respectful, but people said it was racist because black people in Africa should be like Wakanda, right? So they had to rewrite it into like this culture, super science that are the most powerful thinkers and powerful magicians in the entire world, because otherwise you're a racist, right?
Yeah.
So it's very funny, right? We got somebody who commented here in the live chat. Dracopol says, white characters can be serious, funny, buffoonish, good, evil, whatever suits the story. No one will ever whine about a character casting disrepute on the entire white race, right? And I think that's a very interesting point, because part of what this wokeism does, which again is a product of the white bourgeoisie, of the white middle class, of the overeducated trust fund babies, who have this the whole thing is just to satisfy their masturbatory fantasies of being Che Guevara, right? So they, again, in their demands, are creating this situation where the only people who are allowed to be the full spectrum of human qualities as a character, be it in an RPG, be it in video games, in comics, or in movies, is somebody who's white, right? Because you can't, there are certain things that you're just not going to be able to have if a character, and white male mostly, right? Because a female character can't be anything other than strong and powerful, right? A transgendered character could not be anything other than stunning and brave, right? And characters of races that aren't white can't be anything other than the most nobly imaginable avatar, the paragon of perfection, right? Because if not, the SJWs are going to complain. They're going to call you a racist, right? So it means that everybody else except, white males are limited in how much humanity they can actually present and how fully human they can actually be, right? Because they can't be evil, they can't be stupid, they can't be imperfect. In some cases, they can't be ever afraid, they can't be, incapable in any way. So it's actually a horrifically devastating effect that it has on all of literature as it was, right, or the many varieties thereof, and in the presentation of characters. It means that all of these other groups, all the identity groups SJWs pretend to care about, will end up becoming unbelievably diminished in the scope of their humanity.
Wow. Okay.
All right, I've silenced you both. Sorry about that.
I can't add anything into that. It was a pretty good rant.
Thank you.
Okay, and then the sixth and final bullet point is they're just saying they're proactively seeking new, diverse talent to join their staff and pool of freelance writers and artists. So, it used to be enough that you were gay or bisexual that they would hire you, but now, and if you think about it, I think they've only ever hired white people for as how woke Wizards is on the D&D side. I mean, I don't know. I can't think of anybody that I know that's worked there.
Why would you not, at every opportunity, hire the best person for the job, no matter who they were, or what color of skin they had, or their sexual preference, or their gender? Like, if they're doing the best job for a reasonable amount, then hire that person. I mean, you don't have to go searching out for whatever. I mean, if someone puts out a resume and you interview them and they're the best candidate for the job, you hire that person.
Again, it's the underlying assumption that the SJW left has that most of the people that they think they need to protect are inferior, right? And couldn't possibly be the best person for the job. So you have to change how the rules go and allow these people to get in without consideration of their abilities, right? I think a lot of this.
It's like you're casting for a position, like like on a movie set or something. You're not actually hiring a game designer, or a book writer, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I don't even understand this whole obsession people have with people's sexuality and race. I never even thought of that once. Of all the books I've read in my life or all the games I've played, I never like, I wonder if this guy likes it in the butt, or I wonder if this dude was black. Like, it's some trivia that you might find out later. Like, oh, Mike Pondsmith, was an African American male. That's interesting. But who cares? You know what I mean? He made a great game.
That's your white privilege talking, gringo. As a Latino, I can tell you that all Latino gamers, what they really want are games that are just full of Latino people doing things like, being gauchos or being narco-traffickers or things like that, or being, poor people trying to cross the border. And we don't want to play games like Star Wars or D&D or Vampire or any of that stuff, right? This is the supposed argument, right? Is that if you don't represent some kind of demographic group, then that demographic group won't be interested, which is complete bullshit, right? Because I live in Latin America and Latino gamers play exactly the same games that everybody else plays, and they don't need to be pandered to at all, right? Like there's nothing about any RPG that needs to be made special for Latinos, for example, you know?
Right. Yeah, I totally agree with that. What do you think, Venger?
I was reading the comments. What was the question?
Don't worry about it. Is there anything interesting in the comments you want to point out? Anyone say anything that you thought was worth sharing?
That meritocracy is racist, apparently.
Yeah.
And also we were talking about some of the artwork. Dan Vince had a serious question. If I thought the clowns at Wizards of the Coast actually knew a good job from a bad one. And I responded with, I think over there they must pull artist hat out of a hat. Artist names out of a hat, sorry. Because the artwork is really hit or miss throughout the D&D line. 5th edition, going back to 4th edition, even 3rd edition. I mean, not everything was great with 1st edition or 2nd edition, but I think on the whole,
I think
D&D was far superior
tradition.
artistically to the semi-good, semi-garbage that we have now.
I don't know. I think D&D has always had a tradition of combining really amazing with really shitty art. Like if you page through the 1st edition books, you'll find a lot of unbelievable 70s art and then a bunch of really, really bad 70s art, right? And the 2nd edition period, don't even get me started, where you have like fat middle-aged men holding up a tiny dragon, you know, and they're very clearly like somebody drew their friends there in Wisconsin, you know, and made them into fantasy characters, and it looks like just so unbelievably crappy, you know, like it's just the most anti-heroic thing possible. But then there are some 2nd edition artworks that are really amazing too, right?
If that's the piece, if you're talking about the piece that I think you are, I think that was voted one of the best pieces of 2nd edition art, like of all time.
Well, people have no taste.
And pundits crapping on it. So send your hate mail to RPG Pundit.
Don't dox him. Come on.
Look. The thing is that I think some people have really, I don't know, maybe it really appeals to a certain type of middle-class gamer from Middle America. But to me, it seems to be a destruction of the heroic ideal, right? Just as much as a lot of the, you know, when people insist, when SJWs insist on like superheroes being fat or female superheroes being intentionally ugly, you know, because that's supposed to like be diverse. But, you know, the point is you don't want to, like, you know, you don't want to see an action movie starring a guy that looks a lot like you. You want to see an action movie starring Bruce Lee, right? Like you want to see people in an idealized form. And that's a natural product of human nature, right? That in art, we seek what is ideal, not, you know, some kind of Soviet realism or something like that, you know? And this was not Soviet realism, but maybe it was like, you know, Reagan era realism or something, you know? It looked like someone took a picture of a bunch of guys who'd gone fishing and just changed the fish for a very small dragon, you know?
Yeah, anyway. But at the same time, not every piece of art needs to be this grand, sweeping, epic, mythic kind of thing.
Well, D&D
sometimes it just has to capture like the essence of the game.
Yeah, but the essence of the game is heroism, right? Like D&D should be epic. Maybe not always heroic in the sense of good versus evil, but it should look really freaking epic, right?
For 2nd edition, I would agree with you. But I mean, if you look at a lot of old school D&D, just like the new stuff with the retro clones, like Dungeons and Crawl Classics, you know, their main tagline is, or at least it was, that you're no hero. You're like, I don't know, a cut purse.
A cut purse.
Yeah, but the art is still epic. Sometimes it's epic cut purse stuff, right? Like you look at the cover of the original player's handbook, right, with the thieves trying to steal the jewel from the Demon's Head idol, right? Like that's not really heroic, but it is like an epic, iconic image, right? It's an idealized image of what the D&D experience of the dungeon crawling kind of scummy rogues is like, right?
But then you look at the back of the cover, and it's just a bunch of guys carrying out lizardmen bodies, and you know, picking up the I don't know, the sweeping up the bird poop that was left over from the raid. I don't know.
Not as iconic, right? And not as memorable either, you know.
Right. But you got the two faces. You got the
Yeah.
iconic, epic, mythic, and then you got the realistic, which is, you know, you're not a hero, maybe. You're just kind of like a regular guy, like a lovable loser. Like in Dodgeball, you're like the main character. His name escapes me.
Well, while you're thinking, let me point out in my DCC campaign, which is one of the longest running DCC campaigns in the world at this point, right, and has some of the highest level characters. My characters, the entire theme of The Last Sun is failure, right? Like it's a world that's filled with people who have failed, and the player characters are a bunch of failures, right? Like they're losers, but they are epic losers, right? Like they've done epic things in disastrous ways that often makes things worse than when they began. But everything they do is over the top, right? And I think that should be the kind of the essence of the non-heroic D&D, right? You could also have like the ideal, like Lion and Dragon is the ideal D&D. Look at the cover of my Lion and Dragon image, right? It's got these, you know, these majestic heroic medieval knights, right? Which is kind of the Arthurian ideal. So I think those are the two sides of what D&D art should be. But there's never really a good excuse to have D&D art that's banal, you know. That's where you get the problem. Whether it's banal in modern SJW sense or otherwise.
Rendered. You know, if it looks like the artist like literally spent 10 minutes making it on his computer, that pisses me off. I'd rather have
like crappy digital art,
really well done, like it's got a lot of heart in it, but it's just a pile of bodies, like nobody's doing nothing, just a pile of dead characters. I'd rather see that really well done rather than, you know, some dude pulling a sword from the stone, you know, and there's wizards that are like shooting fireballs at dragons, you know, but it looks like, you know, like it's all smudgy and like it's got, you know, it's just like crapped out in maybe an hour or so, with, you know, there's good art.
That's fair. You don't want shitty art no matter what the theme is. Yeah. That's absolutely right. Yeah. Any other points on their list there, Job?
That's their last one. But I did want to throw in one more thing. I just couldn't figure out a good spot to jump in. Is, you know, as far as like, you know, diversity type of initiatives. I mean, one place I think is totally valid is in artwork. You know, definitely if you go back through some of your books and you're like, oh shit, I just drew like, you know, every page is you know 99% white adventurers or something. I can definitely see a reason for, you know, trying to be more inclusive in the artwork, because, you know, when you look at the art, it's when you kind of project yourself into the game. But as far as who creates shit, I don't care what you are.
What about the demographics though? Like, I don't know what the numbers are, but let's say that 80% of people that play D&D are straight white males.
Right. Yeah.
Like, what at what point do you just kind of like shoot yourself in the foot economically, or you just like go out of your way to try too hard to have more diverse characters and artwork? Like, I don't know where that line is. Like,
for me, it becomes very. I think it's very basic, and I think that this is something that people overlook, right? Like, I mean, when I look at a piece of fantasy art in a D&D game or some other RPG product, and it has a person that is neither, you know, Northern European or Latino, you know, that doesn't look like me, that doesn't make me want to play the game any less, right? Like, I mean, if I see some black hero or an Asian looking wizard, that I don't suddenly look at it and go, well, I don't feel represented by this, right? I think, oh, that guy's badass, right? He's fighting that giant, and, you know, he's it looks like it's really going to be a really tough battle for him, right? and I can identify with the heroism, with the values of what's being presented there. Or if it's like, you know, some guy that's about to do a sneak attack, I go, you know, and then he looks, you know, again, it's a woman or something like that. A female thief is about to kill a guard, right? I'm like, oh, she looks badass, right? Like this is somebody who is who's going to be competent, right? And I can imagine my own character doing that, whether or not my own character would look like that, right? So I don't think that representation takes anything away from me. And I think that the idea that you have to have your own demographic represented is where there's a big error there, right? Like, I mean, again, I don't think any Latino in any game, any of the gamer Latinos I know would be like, well, you know, in the D&D book, I don't see any Latinos, so I don't want to play D&D. I've never heard anyone say that, or I feel excluded even. They never say that, right? Because you just don't think in those terms, right?
And I think, you know,
normal person, you look at that and you look at the message that the art is trying to convey, not anything else. When I look at, you know, Asian art, and I've done a lot of study of Asian art, right? And you see what are clearly Chinese people in Asian art doing interesting things, whatever they're doing in the art, whether it's meant to be a depiction of man versus nature or the isolation or the vastness of the world, or, you know, battle scenes or stuff like that. I never think, oh, well, I can't relate to this because I'm white, you know?
Right.
But I do think that what really needs to matter is the content of what you're making, what the art is for, right? So D&D is generic fantasy, and it can definitely include all varieties of skin tones or whatever, because it's just fantasy world. It's not really medieval Europe. It's not really anything, right? So you can put it all in there, and that's not a problem. But the issue is that a game should reflect the setting that it's trying to present. So, for example, I wouldn't put, you know, Black or Native American characters in the artwork of Lion and Dragon or Dark Albion, because that doesn't fit the setting.
Because you're a racist,
right? No, it's not because I'm racist. When I did
Heroes
of
Indra,
Indra,
joking. I know.
I didn't put in any white characters in Heroes of Indra. I pointed out to people, you cannot find a single white character. You can't play a white character in Heroes of Indra, right? And
now that's racist.
It's entirely Indian, right? And it's all Indian characters, right? Because that's what fits the setting.
Right.
It's also the first RPG, in case you guys didn't know this, because I didn't used to promote it all the time, but now I mention it every time I can because it pisses off the SJWs. It was the first RPG to feature a transgender hero on the cover, right? So Arrows of Indra is a groundbreaking.
That's not exactly true, Pundit, because there was some sci-fi game where there was a post-human, and that post-human might have been transgendered beneath his post-human
That's
pants.
right. It's a possibly hermaphroditic monkey in a transhumanist game, and they claim that.
Yeah, transhumanists are
just to not have like very
too.
clearly human, you know, transgender wizard on the cover of Arrows of Indra.
Right.
Be the first, you know.
Sorry, I just had to throw out the internet.
No, that's good. That's good to remember how much SJWs have pundit derangement syndrome, to the point of view that they would rather the first transgender hero be a monkey than be a character on the cover of one of my books.
Oh my God.